October 5th, 2025. The scene is set. Port Everglades, Florida. United States intelligence has traced the dark silhouette of the Black Gun Network, a criminal empire operating from within America's own supply chain. Beneath the glow of dock lights and the towering cranes, this network has moved over 2,600 rifle kits and 13 million rounds of ammunition, along with nearly $250 million in laundered cash through Florida's bustling ports. This is enough firepower to fully equip the entire army of a small nation. Every container labeled as marine equipment was, in truth, a disguised shipment of lethal instruments bound for the southern border and the cartels lying in wait. This is no small-time smuggling operation. It's an industrial-scale trafficking enterprise that replenishes cartel forces month after painstaking month, right on the Texas border. In response, 300 federal agents and elite U.S. Navy SEALs are now mobilized. Their objective is direct and uncompromising: to crush this network before sunrise or watch its military power spiral beyond control. Will this critical operation succeed in dismantling the criminal machine before it metastasizes into an even greater threat? Or will the Black Gun Network's reach extend further, across borders and into the heart of other nations? Join me as we expose the unvarnished truth. The date, October 5th, 2025. The time, 03:20 hours. The location, Port Everglades, Broward County, Florida. The port begins to stir, but with a tense, unnatural quiet. Cranes groan, and the low blast from a distant warship drifts across the dark water. A long line of steel containers sits under the sodium lights like sleeping giants. Inside a nondescript warehouse off a lonely service road, men begin their shift. They move with the routine of a legitimate marine fittings business. But their business is not legitimate. This is the factory floor where simple parts become the deadly instruments of modern warfare. For months, investigators have been piecing together a pattern that appeared ordinary on paper, but in practice, its lethality was a stark lesson in modern warfare. Inside each sealed container were approximately 2,600 component kits, barrels, bolt carriers, triggers, and serialized parts enough to equip a small army. A single container yielded enough components to assemble 1,300 combat rifles in just 1 week. Now, multiply that by the 3 containers they moved per week, and the cold arithmetic of this operation becomes truly brutal. 3,800 rifles a week, 15,800 a month, totaling over 180,000 weapons a year. A flood of arms designed to challenge established military power. The network operates under the name the Garrison Shield Network, a bland facade, meticulously crafted to mask the sheer violence of its enterprise. Their corporate invoices list marine hardware, while bank transfers show clean, round numbers, all wired through a complex web of anonymous shell companies. Behind this sterile paper trail, cash drops were whispered about in hotel rooms. Investigators painstakingly traced at least $190 million each quarter, moving through this convoluted web of accounts, more than enough capital to finance dozens of smuggling runs, establish secure fuel caches, and pay off a network of compromised officials. From one routine manifest, the operation's second act was revealed. Containers would sail under legitimate flags, rendezvousing with smaller freighters 60 nautical miles offshore. A ghost fleet no U.S. Navy warship would ever detect. There, the cargo was transferred to 7 unregistered skiffs per convoy, which slipped into coastal coves at night, evading Air Force surveillance. From those darkened coves, the cargo moved overland, using dirt roads and hidden trailers, flowing south across bridges directly into Tamaulipas and the veins of the cartels. This was no spontaneous act of crime. This was a logistical feat worthy of a professional military.
Spontaneous crime.
It was
industrialized arms trafficking,
designed and built
audited.
to be scalable. Port Everglades was the linchpin, the critical node in their entire operation. Production, concealment, transportation, transfer a formidable and efficient pipeline. Cut off that key point, and you effectively paralyze the whole machine. The investigators, a joint task force including U.S. Army and Navy intelligence, stared at the manifest, and they asked quietly, with the same cold certainty they carried into every operation, how many more? How many lives would be irrevocably altered? if the next 3 containers, filled with instruments of modern warfare, made landfall. It all unfolded between October 6th and October 8th, 2025. For 2 days, there was only the hum of glowing screens and the intense focus of sleepless analysts. Across the Gulf of Mexico, faint digital pulses, picked up by sensitive military-grade equipment, began to tell a story that was never meant to be heard. From Miami to Laredo, a joint military task force of 300 agents from the FBI, ICE, and the U.S. Navy's intelligence arm pieced together a clandestine network, a network so vast it blurred the line between a criminal enterprise and a direct threat to regional stability. Every clue was a fragment. A single wire transfer here, a faint radar echo from a Navy patrol there, but by dawn, on October 9th, the pattern was impossible to deny. 48 suspicious maritime transfers had occurred in just 6 months. 13 cargo ships were repeatedly deactivating their AIS trackers, going dark to any nearby warship. Each blackout lasted for precisely 39 minutes. And every single blackout coincided with a ghost pickup by a smaller, faster vessel. A vessel that would appear minutes later, racing towards the Texas coastline. The data team's calculations were chilling. A single convoy could move 3,800 rifle kits, enough to equip an entire cartel army battalion every single week. The financial trail painted an even more disturbing picture of their military power. ICE managed to trace 912 wire transfers, flowing through 34 different shell companies, stretching all the way from Florida and Panama to Belize, just shy of the Mexican border. Over $190 million moved every quarter, laundered through a sophisticated web of casinos, freight companies, and untraceable cryptocurrency wallets. A single flagged account showed $12.9 million in withdrawals over a span of just 25 days, a figure that mirrored the estimated street value of the smuggled weapons. Then at 2:45 a.m. on October 8th, an Air Force satellite captured the distinct thermal signatures of 7 unregistered skiffs departing from a freighter 60 nautical miles off the coast. At that exact moment, FBI field agents, working alongside the U.S. Army, intercepted critical radio chatter, hearing coded phrases like cargo ready and transfer green. In a matter of minutes, all the pieces locked into place, revealing the full scale of the operation. What had begun as mere numbers on screens aboard a U.S. Navy warship had now become a lethal kill chain. The pipeline was active, fast, immensely profitable, and heavily protected. High-level military commanders studied the final intelligence, exchanged one determined look,
and sent a single encrypted word through the network.
Execute. The long, silent watch of surveillance was over. A storm of overwhelming military power was about to be unleashed. Can the U.S. military dismantle the Black Gun network before it metastasizes, or is this just the beginning of a new shadow war? Share your perspective in the comment section below.
5:30 a.m.
4:30 Northern Far, Texas. The word execute flashed across encrypted screens, and in a matter of seconds, the pre-dawn tranquility was violently shattered. The roar of U.S. Army vehicles, the thunder of rotors, and the sound of boots hitting mud filled the air. Through the heavy, humid air, 300 federal agents, elite Navy SEALs, and HSI operatives, a true fist of the Navy, advanced on the compound once considered impregnable. What followed was not simply a raid. It was a full-scale, coordinated assault. At 5:33, the first breach team sliced
beneath
through
the cranes and
perimeter fence. Muzzle flashes erupted from the warehouse, painting fiery orange streaks across the morning fog. Less than 30 seconds later, 3 armored trucks roared out from the back lot, their mounted gunmen spraying rounds wildly into the darkness. The operators from the U.S. Navy answered with cold surgical precision. 2 AT-4 rockets found their mark, slamming into the lead vehicle and scattering a torrent of flaming debris across the entire yard. The third truck careened violently off the road, its engine block utterly shredded by .50 caliber rounds from a hovering Black Hawk, a testament to the Air Force's dominance. Within the compound's walls, absolute chaos erupted. A small army of 70 cartel gunmen fought back with a hail of fire from AK-47s, PKMs, and grenade launchers. The cacophony was the very definition of modern warfare. Over 7,900 rounds were expended in just 12 minutes. a testament to the intensity of modern warfare. The tracer rounds sliced through the dense fog like streaks of crimson lightning. One elite squad from the U.S. Navy SEALs breached the eastern warehouse, uncovering 1,200 rifles, 95,000 rounds of ammunition, and shipping crates stamped with the insignias of 8 different Mexican cartels, a clear sign of a powerful syndicate. Simultaneously, another military unit stormed the main control building, discovering $4.8 million in cash, alongside encrypted ledgers and manifests, detailing 3 upcoming convoys headed for the border. At 4:47, the engagement reached its absolute climax, a display of overwhelming military power. 2 Apache gunships, the pride of the U.S. Army aviation, swooped low with their cannons roaring to life. 240 rounds of 30mm high-explosive shells shredded the last pockets of resistance. Watchtowers crumbled, fuel drums ignited in massive fireballs, and concussive explosions echoed through the valley. The inferno consumed the entire compound, painting the pre-dawn sky a hellish orange as the ground army operators moved methodically through the wreckage, securing prisoners and clearing subterranean bunkers. By 5:10 in the morning, the operation was concluded. The final tally was 29 cartel gunmen neutralized and 38 captured alive, while dozens more were reported to have fled into the surrounding wilderness. The ground was a scene of utter devastation. Burning trucks, shattered crates, and captured rifles stacked in large, disorganized heaps. The scale of the combined seizures was enough to stun even the seasoned commanders overseeing the mission. 2,500 completed rifles, 1,900 unfinished kits, and $6.8 million in laundered cash were recovered. Over the comms, the commander's voice, calm and professional like that of a seasoned Navy officer, cut through the static. "Objective Alpha is secure," he reported. The cartel's convoy routes were severed, their main storage yard was utterly destroyed, and the network's logistical spine had been broken. But as the smoke drifted east across the Rio Grande, a sobering reality began to set in. One undeniable truth lingered among the high command, from the Air Force generals to the captain of a distant warship on patrol. This single, decisive battle had severed a major artery in their operations. But the beast, though grievously wounded, was far from dead. It was a hydra with many heads. You're going to want to stay with us for this. Because if you thought that firefight was intense, just wait until you dot. See how deep the money trail goes and who it leads to. October 13th, 2025. The new front lines: Miami, San Antonio, and Mexico City. Before the smoke from the initial engagement could even settle, the second phase was already underway. Crucial intelligence was recovered from the smoldering ruins, 2 heavily encrypted drives, and a stack of ledgers that exposed what investigators would later call the hidden financial spine of the entire black market arms network. Behind every bullet was a banker. Behind every rifle, a corporate front funding its own military power. The battlefield had shifted. This was modern warfare, fought not with dirt and fire, but with data and finance. And this new offensive was designed to strike harder than any bullet ever could. At 0600 hours on October 11th, Homeland Security's Financial Crimes Division launched the sweeping Operation Iron Ledger. 34 shell companies spread across Florida, the Bahamas, and Belize were raided in a simultaneous military-style precision strike. Tactical teams breached office towers in Miami's prestigious Brickell district, immediately cutting power and seizing servers before a single byte of incriminating data could be wiped. The scale of the financial web they uncovered was staggering. $62 million in frozen assets, 280 separate accounts directly linked to weapon shipments, and transfer logs detailing $740 million laundered over 18 months, much of it funding logistics that could challenge any navy. A single firm had processed payments equivalent to arming an entire U.S. Army battalion every 10 days. Meanwhile, in San Antonio, another front in this war erupted with violence. An ATF tactical team stormed a nondescript safehouse belonging to a key logistics broker tied directly to the network's Florida branch. Inside, they discovered 5 unregistered trucks, each ingeniously fitted with false floors, concealing crates of AR components, suppressors, and illegal conversion switches, a complete arsenal for over 5,000 weapon kits, enough to equip a small army, all prepped for export. The raid turned hot when 3 heavily armed guards opened fire from a second-story window. The firefight was over in less than 3 minutes, but the cost was high. 6 suspects were neutralized. 1 ATF officer was wounded, and the entire building was engulfed in smoke after a hidden munitions cache inside the safe house ignited. At the same time in Mexico City, coordination between DEA liaisons, local authorities, and U.S. Air Force intelligence was reaching its critical point. This critical military intelligence triggered a cascade of arrests. 11 cartel intermediaries were captured in safe houses, while 7 vehicles loaded with smuggled rifles were intercepted.
Financial tracing confirmed their link to the Florida accounts seized days earlier.
Florida accounts seized just days earlier. By October 15th, the full, chilling picture had finally emerged. The Black Gun Network was not some side operation. It was an industrial supply chain that threatened regional military power, worth over $1.4 billion, moving the very tools of modern warfare faster than governments could regulate them. Every spreadsheet, every seized drive, and every arrest cut another tendon from the beast. As the final warrants were executed, the Joint Task Force, with support from the U.S. Army, stood over mountains of confiscated
and
hardware
ledgers.
and frozen
They hadn't
financial
just
ledgers.
raided a smuggling
They
ring.
hadn't just raided a smuggling ring, they had crippled a transnational criminal industry. Yet even in victory, the silence that followed felt unsettlingly temporary. The numbers themselves spoke too loudly to be ignored. If this much firepower, enough to equip a small army, could hide in plain sight, what else was still moving unseen in the shadows? By October 15th,
Settled.
the operational
But the
dust
magnitude
had
of the
settled.
operation was
But the
only
true
beginning to
magnitude of
register.
The operation was only then beginning to register. In a high-security press room located in Washington, D.C., the participating federal agencies stood united. The ATF, HSI, DOJ, the U.S. Navy, and the Air Force presented a single front, announcing Operation Iron Chain, the most extensive multi-agency interdiction in over a decade. The numbers they reported were simply unprecedented. Over 5,000 fully assembled firearms were recovered, alongside 13,000 kits, seized $248 million in frozen assets, and 41 high-process value suspects detained across 3 different countries. But beyond mere statistics, the strategic impact reverberated far to the south. Within just 2 weeks, cartel-related violence dropped by 29% in, quote, 6 known hot zones along the U.S.-Mexico border. Tamaulipas reported its lowest homicide count in 8 months. In border towns like Hidalgo and Far, locals described a rare and welcome calm. One resident, interviewed by a federal liaison, stated, "For the also first time in years, my children were able to sleep through the night." In the background, forensic accounting continued to unspool even deeper ties. Analysts confirmed that a portion of the Garrison Shield Network's funds, a sign of its
funds were
significant
routed through a
military
previously
power,
unknown
were being
political
routed
action.
through a previously unknown political action committee. This group had made campaign contributions to multiple state-level officials, and the investigations are still ongoing. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, near a major U.S. Navy port, agents cataloged the last of the seized evidence. Crates now sat in orderly rows under tarps at a secure military facility. It was a staggering cache of weapons that could have equipped a small army, now prevented from ever reaching the street. This was a silent testimony to months of surveillance, much of it aided by the Air Force, and sophisticated code-breaking. It was also a triumph of essential cross-border cooperation. The human impact also emerged powerfully from the aftermath of the operation. U.S. Army veterans groups praised the mission for preventing further bloodshed. Families deeply affected by gun violence sent an overwhelming number of supportive letters. One former Marine, a proud veteran of the Navy, whose brother had been killed by cartel, Crossfire in Nuevo Laredo, wrote, "This wasn't just another bust. This was a measure of justice." But no one on the Joint Task Force was claiming victory lightly. They knew every such success inevitably leaves a power vacuum. Fresh intelligence now suggested that remnants of the network were already regrouping. Fragments of their infrastructure were spreading across Central America, seeking new routes far from any patrolling warship. They were searching for new proxies, new currencies, and new digital blind spots to exploit. The battle had been won, a decisive engagement in a larger conflict. The enemy's system had been profoundly disrupted, but the architecture of trafficking, like any adversary in modern warfare, was learning and adapting. This was by no means an ending. It was simply a fracture point. And the next phase of this fight would not be conducted with boots on the ground or bullets, but with unwavering vigilance, persistence, and the absolute resolve to prevail, ensuring the supply chain of chaos remained shattered. The mission was complete, but its repercussions lingered across the geopolitical landscape. From the scorched remnants of the Far Yard to the secured hangars of Fort Lauderdale, every piece of captured hardware now sat behind crime scene tape, a stark testament to how perilously close the nation had come to being overwhelmed by a flood of illegal weapons. What had started as fragmented intelligence had escalated into a new form of modern warfare, a conflict waged across land, sea, and the digital frontier. And for the first time in years, this shadow war concluded with a decisive American victory. In total, more than 18,000 firearms, millions of rounds of ammunition, and over $250 million in illicit assets were seized from the hands of these hostile actors. Military analysts deemed it the single greatest disruption of the illegal arms economy in the Western Hemisphere's recent history. But for the men and women of the U.S. Army and Navy who executed the mission, victory was measured in something far more profound. It was found in the silence that followed the gunfire, in the children crossing schoolyards without fear, and in the border towns where the night finally reclaimed its peace. Yet, even as the media celebrated and politicians claimed their share of success, those within the Joint Task Force understood the grim reality. The machinery of corruption and greed never truly sleeps. Somewhere over the horizon, a new network was already taking shape. Another illicit warship was being loaded, and another financier was counting their gains. The lesson learned by our military power was both simple and brutal. True vigilance.
Still, this mission, Operation Iron Ledger, proved something.
Operation Iron Ledger was a powerful demonstration. It proved that coordination, persistence, and the courage of our army could shatter even $1 billion empire built on a foundation of deceit. It showed that when the best of the U.S. Navy, the Army, and the Air Force move with a singular purpose, no wall of secrecy is impenetrable. And so, as the last convoy of armored vans rolled away under the Florida sunrise, the U.S. Army, the story of the Black Gun Network closed under the Florida sunrise. It left behind one final truth about the brutal reality of modern warfare fought in the shadows. Justice may move with the deliberate patience of the U.S. Navy, but when it strikes, it hits with the unstoppable impact of a warship, leaving nothing standing. If you believe these battles matter, the domestic fight against corruption, violence, and the darkness itself, then share this story, because this front is as vital as any our Air Force defends in the skies. Like, subscribe, and help us keep shining a light on these conflicts, a critical form of military power in the information age.